if they slow down in innovation, if something happens to a fab, SK Hynix is right behind them or right next to them. Samsung is right behind them or right next to them. So like that pressure is just right there that it scares me a bit, right? The amount of supply chain integration that needs to go with something like that to make sure there's nothing that breaks. If one of your supply partner messes up, you're screwed.
Good evening, everybody. At least if you're in this part of the world. Today was a whirlwind in the market, and we are live here on X to talk about it, specifically AMD earnings, together with Jose Najarro. Appreciate you coming on. Obviously, you are massive in the semiconductor world. You cover a lot of it on YouTube. You put some great content out on X. AMD came out. It was a double beat for the earnings, but the stock did not react positively, and you are the person to talk to as to why. So that is why we've got you on here tonight. And of course, talk a little bit more about what we uncovered within the earnings. So welcome to the show. Excited to dig into this. Thanks for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. I mean, super exciting. Unfortunately, right, I wish we would come with greater and better news for AMD. But I would say if you're a long-term investor, the thesis hasn't changed. I think it's more just kind of, we'll talk a little bit about it, more kind of just, there's a lot of excitement in the semiconductor market. And if you don't meet that excitement in the short term, it seems like your story may never come.
That's a good way to put it. So let's talk about this story a little bit. Looking at the numbers, so over here on my screen, revenue, $10.27 billion. That's a 33% year-over-year increase, as well as a beat of roughly 6%. EPS, or adjusted EPS here, of $1.53. That's a 40% year-over-year increase and a beat of 16%. Adjusted net income of $2.52 billion, 40% year-over-year. Their GAAP net income was up 213% year-over-year to $1.51 billion. Gross margin stayed stable, 54%, great margins. And your Q1 outlook, $9.8 billion of revenue. So overall, the numbers, if you just looked at them on a screen, they don't look bad, right? They look pretty solid.
Yeah, they look extremely strong. I mean, you had a beat in revenue, you had a beat in earnings per share, you had a healthy gross margins, like you mentioned, and guidance was also a beat. I think the market was expecting closer like 9.4, 9.3, and it gave 9.8 billion at midpoint. But like I mentioned, I think the AI story, right? You have, at least in the past few days, having this excitement in the memory space, and all these memory companies just seeing massive revenue growth. I think in the short term, everybody, when you think of semiconductors, you think of all these stocks kind of being equal. But within the semiconductor industry, there's different products, different use cases, and the same type of shortages and stuff that you're seeing in the memory space is not what you're currently seeing with like the products that AMD has. So you're not going to get that blowout quarter for AMD this quarter or even next quarter. Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, has mentioned for them the inflection point is the second half of 2026, because that's when they release, for those that are not familiar, that's when they release a chip called the MI450. This is when they're going to go through this massive rack scale solution where they're not only going to be selling a chip, they're going to be selling a whole system. And within the whole system, you have CPUs, you have DPUs, you have various types of chips within that system. So in theory, you should see a growth in revenue. You should see a growth in margins because you're selling everything compact. And that's the real story for AMD, is that second half of this year. So if you're a long-term investor, you just want to make sure that story is intact. Anything before then is kind of just like I wouldn't even call it a preview, because it's not indicative of how that's going to be, because the MI450 is a whole completely different beast of all the chips they have out right now.
It really is a race to continuously put out these new updated chips, right? And continue to push forward. It's kind of them right now, and Nvidia, right? Kind of Nvidia perhaps a little bit ahead still when it comes to these chips, but AMD not too far behind. And they do seem to fall into similar areas where they're both becoming, very reliant on memory, right? They're looking at a certain type of picture. How do you draw kind of comparisons and explain to people what you see as the main differences between the two?
Between kind of like Nvidia and AMD, or
yeah.
All right. So let me just say, my biggest position is in Nvidia, right? That's my number one position. My third biggest position is AMD. So I'm extremely bullish on Nvidia. I think Nvidia is going to be the king, continuously going to be the king in the AI market. But this market is growing so rapid. It's growing I mean, we just saw Microsoft report earnings. They mentioned that their cloud growth was not possible, was throttled because of GPUs. They didn't have enough GPUs to give to their cloud business and their first-party software suppliers. You had Meta increase capex by almost 80% on the top range. You had TSMC last week, I think they reported earnings, mentioned that AI compounded annual growth rate on AI chips is expected to be north of 55, in the high 50s for the next few years. You see OpenAI doing fundings of supposedly 100 billions. You see Oracle just did a 50, supposedly, all right, we don't know what the true number is. You see Oracle just did a $50 billion announcement that they're going to do a mixture of half cash and half debt and half equity raising. So the overall story is there's not enough compute. So you don't have to be the best, in my opinion. And I think that's what excites me for AMD. It's not like I'm knocking on Nvidia, but it's like this market, you have so much demand, you have so many different workloads, you have so many different solutions that even the second player, no matter how far behind you are, you're going to be able to get revenue. And from starting from a smaller base, that revenue growth can definitely make a big difference. I mean, market cap of AMD is less than $400 billion right now compared to the $4 trillion giant of Nvidia. So even breadcrumbs for AMD can be a massive boot. Breadcrumbs of Nvidia's could be a massive meal for AMD.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of opportunity in this area. And I think a couple things that I want to dig into here kind of off the top is AI demand, not meaning AI profitability yet. And you're talking a little bit to this in terms of, first half, second half. Also, a little bit on margins and how you think those are going to continue to either increase, decrease over the foreseeable future, the next couple of years. And then I think historically with AMD, they really re-rate late, not early typically in a lot of these areas. So I kind of want to talk to that off the top, start there in terms of some of these key items of demand, profitability, margins, and those pieces and how you view them.
Yeah. So for AMD, right, they have two core products. They have in theory, the two core products. They have other chips, but the two revenue drivers are their CPUs, which and their GPUs or AI accelerators. And then those two products are in two markets. They're pretty much in the consumer space, and they're also in kind of the cloud space or the data center space. So both those markets, I see potential growth. First, let's kind of jump back into the consumer space. Server CPU, they are still they're less than 50% in market share compared to like Intel or other players. I forget the actual number. I think it's actually even below 40% in the consumer space. So there's still opportunity for them to grow. And as AI becomes, I am a very much AI bull. I use AI every day on everything that I do, from my semiconductor research to my creatives to my thumbnails to my videos. AI is used nonstop.
Your background?
By background, yes. Everything is thanks to AI, and the amount of stuff I can consume and the stuff I can deliver has increased dramatically. And I think other places are going to see the same thing. So consumers are going to have some form of AI demand in the near future. So for the CPU and the GPU, there's that excitement. In the server side, in the data center side, their server CPUs are definitely a technical leader right now. They continue to see massive demand. Intel reported earnings last week or 2 weeks ago. The days just fly by, but they mentioned that they actually have to kind of eliminate some wafers or inventory from the consumer side and push it to the server side, because there's just so much demand for server CPUs, pretty much driven by the AI demand.
Of course.
And AMD is seeing that win there. And then the GPU side is just, like I mentioned, all that massive investment. So that's going to continue. Then you kind of asked about margins. One thing that AMD is now transforming into, as something Nvidia has done really well, is selling a rack scale system. And obviously, if you're able to package a lot more products of yours in one sale, your margins can just grow from there, right? Just being able to package. If you sell one product, it's easy. You probably make more margins if you sell 3 different products to one customer at the same time. So margin improvements is possible. The only thing is with research and development on these AI chips at the beginning, and just like anything, ramping in volume, it's never 100% from the get-go. You start off and you ramp up. The beginning ramp is always lower on margins, but once you start to get that full production, you see margins improve. So margins is a tricky question because you have that rack scale, but if you're innovating a new product every year, pretty much like these companies are doing, there's going to be like small blips here and there that could create some form of market fear. I don't remember the third question, but hopefully that gives you enough to at least remind me or push into
Yeah, no,
another
you
topic
you hit
there.
on it well, and just kind of bouncing off what you were saying there. I think
Mhm,
right now there's real demand, but there's still
mhm,
bottlenecks. For example, like
mhm.
infrastructure, right, is still bottlenecked in this area, and I think that that's something that they have to push past because we're certainly not at peak cycle here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not. I mean, every cloud provider for Meta, I mean, the ones we saw, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same tomorrow when Google reports, and Thursday when Amazon reports. They need more GPU, and obviously, it's not just the chips, right? It's the power. It's the not maybe sometimes it's not even the actual raw electricity, but it's the ability to get that raw electricity and put it into a power shell, which is kind of that
Yeah,
data center play. So there's so many bottlenecks, but you do with AI models becoming larger, with consumers using more AI, with AIs thinking longer, and you're having kind of these AI agents. I mean, if you haven't, I'm not a software guy, but Claude, I use it and I created some personal apps for myself.
okay.
Where it's insane. It's definitely an app developer for internal resources. Maybe it's not that perfect app developer if you want to create an app to sell to the public, but for something that I want to just use and I know all the ins and outs of, I've made a few apps that help me with my research process. So that
Got it.
coding solution alone is a massive market opportunity.
Yeah. Have you, gone down the Molt bot, Claude bot?
No, I feel it's crazy. So much stuff comes out every week that I feel like if I miss something, I'm so behind. But no, I haven't gone on that down that train just yet.
Yeah, well, me either, just yet. I'm let some others get into it first, let people make the mistakes, create AGI, and then I'll step in, and do my part on some of these pieces. But yeah, you touched on infrastructure, big bottleneck there with some of these pieces, but the demand is super, super real. So, kind of like as a question off of that I've been thinking about, I wrote down earlier was when you look at where AMD is right now with the MI355, MI450 later this year, does this feel like early innings still, or do you think we're getting to like mid cycle for AI revenue yet?
Um, for AI itself, I think we're still in AI. I still think we're really early. Like I mean, AI agents, we still really don't have them just yet, unless you're kind of like a true power user. Um, the robotic space is still early. Autonomous vehicles is still early. Healthcare in the AI market is still early. Everything that's using AI is still very much early. So, in forms of spending and infrastructure, the amount of contracts that these companies are doing for power, lasting long time. Memory companies, they've talked about that they're sold out for this year. It's only the first month or second month. They are already talking to their customers
Yeah.
for 2027. And even and the customers that unfortunately missed the wave, they're already talking about procurement inventory for 2028. It's not gonna be a perfect, and I hate coming into sometimes to these a show that maybe I haven't been in perfect because I might seem like this ultra perma bull. I'm bullish long term. Short term, there's always blips. There could be a little bit of misguidance in inventory or something. So let me just say, always I'm short term bearish. I
Yeah.
think the market always can have like a quick reaction. There could be another deep seek moment. There could be delays in certain data sensors that could create a lot of volatility in the stock. But if you're telling me in the next 4 to 5 years, is there more demand, more data sensors, more AI infrastructure? I'm bullish in that. So I want to say that before I seem like I'm this ultimate perma bull. So long term, 5 years, still very much early innings. In the short term, anything can happen. But what we hear from earnings, that data point, right? I mean, you hear all these bubble stories and all that, but when you hear companies like TSN, someone who's usually very conservative on how they talk,
Yeah.
saying these types of compounded annual growth rates, I rather believe them than these tabloids that are talking about drama between Nvidia, OpenAI, that are talking about drama of Oracle failing, of Corey failing. I rather the people that have been through these cycles tell me what they feel and what they're seeing the changes, and I'll take that word a lot heavier than the tabloids.
Yeah, I like that. I'm pulling up some data real quick just on AMD because it's really awesome. I mean, when you look back on AMD last 17 quarters, they've beat on EPS 14 times. They have not had many misses, to be honest. Even if you go back over the last 10 years, they really don't miss when it comes to the EPS expectations and revenue as well. I believe 16 out of the last 17 quarters, they've beat on revenue, just continued to move up. Revenue, obviously escalating 10 billion plus at this point and just continuing to move and the guidance staying pretty good. So the company seems to be really consistent. Have you gone ahead? Obviously, you do a lot of different research and done any kind of DCF modeling or other pieces on where you believe kind of like a true valuation is for an AMD? And how would you go about as a researcher understanding what those future cash flows could look like?
I mean, I think for me, that's where I could sometimes limit a lot of my, because with this AI market, it's so hard to value or even make some of these predictions. Even just a year off out in the AI market, it's extremely difficult to kind of make any forms of valuations. The closest thing, and I keep it simple, right? Extremely simple.
Yeah.
AMD guided that for the next 4 to 5 years, or the next 3 to 5 years, they expect earnings per share to be over $20. Now, $20, right? The AMD, the semiconductor cycle market usually tends to have a forward PE ratio of north of 30. So just 30 times that 20, you already have a $600 price target, and that's actually a $1 trillion market cap. So when I'm investing in these players, like I mentioned, short-term bullish, I'm looking for, can you be a potential multi-bagger for me within the next few years, right? A multi-bagger outperforms the market in no time. And AMD gives me that opportunity. Just that I could see a $1 trillion based on just that just quick reverse math. But it does come with risk, right? You come with AMD knowing that you're not the GOAT in this space just yet.
Yeah.
It could happen, but you're not the GOAT. Making a rack scale system like they're working on right now is extremely difficult. Being able to sell these massive servers and making sure that the amount of supply chain integration that needs to go with something like that to make sure there's nothing that breaks. If one of your supply partner messes up, you're screwed, right? That can dictate. So supply chain is extremely, extremely difficult. And for someone who hasn't done rack scale solutions like this, that's a big risk, right? If you miss any of these, if your competitor sees a massive growth, if their innovation just gives you massive leaps that your TCO becomes extremely high, and it's better to go with that a competitor. Like there's risk to it, but if you're telling me you're on schedule with what you're doing, if you give me these projections, and Lisa Su is one very similar to kind of the TSM team where she's very conservative in how she gives numbers. So when they give us some type of value, I take that number to some heavy weight and kind of go on to maybe some quick market cap expectations based on the numbers given.
Yeah, let's talk about former Time Person of the Year, Lisa Su. First off, do you think at Thanksgiving she gets any tips from Jensen on, they trade secrets?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Jensen's extremely paranoid, and that's what makes him such a great leader. He probably shares nothing at all, but it's probably pretty awkward to be under that shadow.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting time, but obviously she was on the call and running the call. You listened to the call. What did you think about her tone?
Very exciting. I mean, she's very conservative in she never tries to give crazy numbers and guidance, and I think sometimes the market hates that. Right? They want you to tell me, hey, how much actual AI revenue can you expect give us this upcoming quarter or next quarter? They tend to say pretty much read between the lines, or this is the type of range. So she tends to be not direct in some of the questions. Sometimes the market might hate that. And in forms of guidance, she tends to be usually very conservative, but she does sound exciting. And she did give us the inflection point. She keeps saying an inflection point for AMD is the MI450. That's where they expect some strong revenue growth. And they talked about from here on out to kind of the next 3 to 5 years, they expect a 60% compounded annual growth rate in the data center space. So that's already massive. And that's where I'm going to guess most of that earnings per share that they're guiding for is coming from. But that's massive for them. So she seems just her normal conservative self with a little bit more upbeat. I think as we get closer to the second half, we might see a lot more customers released for the MI450. Right now, the only one is OpenAI, and right now, OpenAI is kind of like a curse. If you say OpenAI's name, it's like, is that really going to get you money? But they're working. They mentioned they're working with a lot of cloud server providers
Good.
and other ones to kind of see that rack scale system go out in the second half.
What do you think was the most tweetable thing that she said on the call?
What was the most tweetable? Honestly, I think she said one thing. She mentioned that the MI325, they're sending licenses to China.
Ah,
So the MI325 is like Nvidia's H200
yeah,
in maybe not in performance, but it's like that equivalent of what you want to
right. That
compare it
that
to.
age. Yeah.
That age era. So that's better than the MI308 that they just shipped out. So they said they're sending licenses for that. That license is not part of the guidance. Um, so they still don't want to give us the clarification if it's happening. But I think if they're sending licenses, there's some demand from Chinese customers about the MI325, which could help potentially be revenue expectations again.
Got it. We talked about memory earlier, and Jensen's talked a lot about memory and the need and demand for memory continuing to increase, and it's caused a huge drive in MU's stock price really running
Mm.
up. And then I think there's another one that people don't typically look at often enough. I wanted to make sure I say it correctly, and that's
SanDisk?
no,
No.
it's SK Hynix.
Oh, SK Hynix. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I saw that SK Hynix is providing like a massive amount, right, of the Nvidia
Yeah,
memory this year.
they're the leaders in HBM. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, it's crazy we don't hear about them so much, but they're the leaders in HBM. They're the ones that really have that massive market for Nvidia, which is the go. But because it is a Korean-based company, I don't think you can trade it here in U.S. markets. You don't get no love
Yeah,
for SK Hynix.
up 365% past year, 1% per day average.
That's insane. That is wild.
Yeah, yeah, you have to buy 3 ETFs basically,
Yeah.
is your main way that you can hold it. But yeah, I wanted to
Mm.
just ask you, if you're investing as well into memory and how you think that these companies are gonna solve their memory issue.
You know what? I'm not investing into memory, and maybe it's just because I've been following this market too long. I hold to certain industries past negativeness a little too much, right? It doesn't mean it's going to happen this time, but it's just like, when something bad happens to you, it's like, it's like,
Scarred.
you know what? I don't want to risk it, right? You're scarred, right? Yeah. So I have those internal scars within the memory space. So for that reason, I'm not in it, but everything we're hearing is supply constraint 2026, supply constraint 2027, even 2028, you're already seeing, like I mentioned, I think Sandus talked about it even though it's not HBM, the storage market in general, they mentioned procurement of customers are looking 2 years out. That doesn't look like your typical memory business. And if it doesn't look like your typical memory business, do you give it your typical valuation? The answer, I guess, is no. Um, but to me, it's like it's a market that it's weird because right, you can kind of make a counter argument. Jose, you are Nvidia investor. Nvidia always looked expensive. It never looked cheap. How come you can't say the same for Micron and the other players? And the big thing is for Nvidia, supply constraint was never the it factor.
Mm.
They were always it was supply constraint was a factor, but it was always their massive lead in technology. So even if they slowed down something, competitors weren't going to catch up. For companies like Micron, while the supply constraint is the factor, if they slow down in innovation, if something happens to a fab, SK Hynix is right behind them or right next to them. Samsung is right behind them or right next to them. So like that
Uh,
pressure is just right there that it scares me a bit, right? It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. If you're a Micron shareholder out there and listening to it, I'm hopeful you keep riding this wave. I'm hopeful it's great for you. But like my money, I don't feel comfortable placing it just, I guess, because of those scars that I've seen in the past.
yeah, don't forget everybody's favorite USB company, SanDisk, on the run, up
Uh,
140% year to date.
Yeah, that one's killing it. Yeah, the memory space. I mean, it's great if you're in them. I mean, you've seen some great 100% in just a few weeks, a few months. That's how great money is made. But it's then holding that money. And with this memory cycle, again, it's lasting. I think, and AMD mentioned today that they expect it to actually get worse in the second half. They're consumer products. They expect the consumer products to be to see a lot of pressure in the second half of this year.
Yeah.
So it's still 6 months out from now because of the memory space still being in the shortage. There was another company called Clack Corporation, which deals in the equipment space.
Yeah.
Their equipment for semiconductor equipment saw a margin decrease because HBM on those big technologies, on those big equipments that they make, is increasing their bill of materials. And they expect that kind of margin hit to continue for the rest of the year. So it's not your typical memory market. It's just not one I personally would. I feel like I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I would wake up like, oh, did something happen wrong? Did a massive? Has there been some innovation that pushes this to be a little bit less supply constrained? So for that reason, it's just not for me.
Yeah, that's fair, especially because you're taking large concentrated positions, right? So it's going to make it much more difficult there to sleep if you have one of those within there. I think to wrap it up, a lot of what we've said is basically that it's not about demand anymore. It's about execution, right? Clearly, the demand is there, and AMD is not here to win quarters. It's here to win the cycle, right? And I think that's what it breaks down to. And AMD has performed very well in the past year. It's still up almost 100%, even with the 8% haircut that it took today. I'm sure plenty of people are coming in and seeing it as an opportunity at this time. Just to wrap it up, what final thoughts do you have for people that are looking at AMD, seeing the reaction, seeing the earnings? Like, how would you summarize it as your message going forward?
AMD has the opportunity, not a guaranteed, but the opportunity to be a $1 trillion player. Now, to get it, the road is open. Now AMD has to execute, and the car doesn't have to break down, can't break down on the way there. MI 450, which is the second half of this year, is the inflection point that you are really looking for. Anything between now and then is not going to be, in my opinion, anything revolutionary for their top or bottom line number. So if you're expecting an AI story to begin for AMD in the short term, don't expect until the second half. Unfortunately, the market is forward looking, so it doesn't mean you wait for the stock to be cheap in the second half, because by then the market can already be pricing in a lot of that growth. So that's the tricky thing about investment. It has the opportunity. The biggest risk, to my opinion, for AMD is rack scale solution is something new that they're doing, and kind of doing that without a hiccup on their first try is not impossible, but somewhat difficult. And if you are an Nvidia investor and an AMD investor, you've seen it with Nvidia. Every other quarter, you were hearing reports of delays or something going wrong or something. I think those similar type of stories will come to AMD as well. There's a delay here, there's a supply chain issue here, and that can create volatility. I'm bullish in the AI market, but I always expect some random news to drive my stock prices down.
Yeah, especially anything that Trump says. For sure. Where can people find you on social media? What ads?
Yeah, so I'm mainly in two platforms. I'm in X, and you can find me at _ Jose Najarro. Or if you find me on YouTube, and I do daily YouTube videos, right? Very much focus on semiconductor and AI stocks. So your Max 7s, your AI infrastructure players, your AI chip companies. You can find me at Jose Najarro Stocks or Jose Najarro, and you should be able to find me there for my daily videos, which I think I should have one in the next few minutes. I'll have a video out.
Let's go. New Jose video coming up fast. This is on our X. If you're watching here on Wolf Financial, you can check it out on YouTube. We'll have it up there as well. More videos coming up. Putting up a video I did with Tom Nash this morning covering PLTR earnings. That'll go up on YouTube. Actually, did just go up. You go check it out there at Wolf _ Financial. Clips, shorts of these videos will be going on Instagram, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here as well. And maybe something on LinkedIn in like 2 weeks for the LinkedIn people. We got to keep them 2 weeks later. They'll hear about AMD earnings. So that's how we go about it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Jose, for coming on. Wishing everybody a great evening. We'll see you on the next one.